What's up guys, welcome back to Daniel Talks Football right here on YouTube. I am Daniel and we are back with another video. In this video we are going to be talking about how to fix Leicester City. This is the first part of a couple of part series. It depends on how many teams need rebuilding, to be honest. But I want to sort of look at how to fix/rebuild a lot of the sides that seem to be struggling or are below the standard expected of them at the moment. And the first one of these sides is Leicester City, my club. It's going to be an emotional one because I've seen my club go through an awful lot over the past season, to be fair, and they certainly need my help. So that's what I'm here to do. Before we do get into the video, please make sure to like the video, comment down below, and also subscribe to the channel. Go over and follow the Instagram and the TikTok Daniel Talks Football on both. Now, as I've said, this will be the first of a few part series. They're going to take a little while to come out. They're not going to be, back to back videos. There'll probably be another one come out in, 2 or 3 weeks. But the first one of these is how to rebuild, how to fix Leicester City. The first thing that Leicester need to do to rebuild, fix themselves, is sort out the manager situation. Now, in 2019, Brendan Rodgers signed a new contract with the club up until 2025. Yes, that's correct. In 2019, he signed a contract up until 2025. At that point, the club were expecting for another club to come in and poach Rodgers. So they thought, let's tie him down to a long deal so that we can try and get more money for him. Now, we're in 2023, and things don't seem to be going so well for Rodgers. Top and the board need to figure out what they're going to do with the manager's situation. Look, Rodgers has done an awful lot for this football club, getting the club into 2 European campaigns back-to-back and winning an FA Cup. Yet recently results haven't been good enough on the pitch. Obviously they started off the season awfully. They had a upturn in form, and then in the last 3 games ever since the restart, again they've lacked creativity and they just have not looked good enough. We'll get on to why that is a little bit later on in the video. But sorting out this manager situation is crucial if it's sacking Rodgers, if it's a mutual term, mutual consent kind of thing, or if it's Rodgers staying. You need to figure it out quickly, because at the moment, the club isn't good enough, and I don't think any Leicester fan would disagree with me there. If it's you give Rodgers more time, you need to sort that out, and you need to communicate that with him, because at the moment it doesn't seem like that's the case. Top does back Rodgers at the moment, and that's understandable because Rodgers has done a lot for the club. Yet you need to sort this out quickly. For me, what I would do is I would get to the end of the season, and if it costs any less than 5 million to sack Rodgers, maybe even 10 million, I'll sack him. Hopefully you could maybe get a mutual consent, mutual term kind of thing. I could see both parties walking away at the end of the season and going, this is best for everyone. And I think that'd be really good if Leicester could do that, get a fresh manager in with new ideas to move into next season, because they really need that fresh start with a new manager. Step 2 of how to fix this club is to sell off the dead wood. Now, this isn't all going to be possible in one window, and I'm not trying to say it is. Yeah, the players that contract expires this summer are Daniel Amati, who I think the club should offer a new deal to, but we'll get onto that a little bit later. Caglar Soyuncu, Johnny Evans, Ryan Bertrand, Nampalys Mendy, Yuri Tielemans, and Jose Perez. That is 7 first-team players whose contract expires this summer. Now, as I've said, I think the club should offer 2 new deals to those players. I think Daniel Amati should be offered a new deal, and I think he would accept that. You offer him a new deal as a rotational centre-back. I know there's a lot of anger in the fan base about the minutes that Daniel Amati is getting at the moment. People don't see him as a starter for the football club, and I understand that. Yet with the amount of squad turnover we're going to have, if you could get him tied down to a new 2 or 3 year deal, it would be a really good piece of business, so that you could then look to further enhance upon that squad. You wouldn't have to spend money on a new centre-back in that position. He could fall back into a rotational sort of option, 3rd or 4th choice. I think he would be happy to do that. The other player I would offer a contract to, however I don't think they would sign it, is Nampalys Mendy. In the past few games he showed a lot of passion, and he actually looks quite good. I've always liked Nampalys Mendy. I don't think he would sign it. I think it's sort of been hit in his mind for a while now that he wants to move on from the football club, so I don't think he would sign it. However, I would offer him that deal. So that would obviously leave Soyuncu, Evans, Bertrand, Mendy, Tielemans and Perez going out on free transfers. Tielemans, obviously, you offer a new contract to, but I think everybody knows at this point that he's going to be moving on and he wants to move on. Deadwood-wise, there's a lot of deadwood to get rid of in the squad as well. Yannick Vestergaard isn't needed at the football club and still has a year left in his contract after this season. You get him gone for whatever the price. If you could pick up a couple of million, do it. If not, just get him gone. I think Dennis Pratt, again, I like Pratt as a player, but I don't think he's really happy with the minutes he's been getting recently. I think there's been a fallout between him and Rodgers, so I can see him moving on either this January or in the summer. Kelechi Iheanacho is another player who isn't getting enough minutes. And I think, again, he's going to be another one to move on. He's got a lot of talent, but he needs to play in a two-striker formation unless aren't playing that at the moment. Other players that possibly aren't deadwood that I'd look to move on. Danny Ward, I just don't think he's good enough. Leicester have a backup goalkeeper in Daniel Ederson, and I think Danny Ward should take a step down to the Championship. You could sell him, I've said here, for 8 million. And yeah, take a step down to the Championship and rebuild at that level where he's probably best suited. Wilfred Ndidi's another one. I like Wilfred Ndidi. I think he's a really, really good player. However, I think now's the time to sell him while he retains a little bit of value. I've said here, I think you can pick up 35 million for him. And I think that would be a really, really good idea if you could do that. Ricardo Pereira is another player in that kind of ilk. His injuries have really prevented him from progressing in his career at Leicester. 1920 Ricardo Pereira was one of the best right backs in the league, if not the best, up there with Trent. Ever since that, he's had so many injuries, he hasn't been able to sort of build on that form. So I think he's another guy that you might want to look to move on this summer. The last player who I haven't mentioned, apart from the two lads that are currently out on loan, and George Hurst and Hamza Chowdhury, I'll quickly touch on them too. Hamza's a guy who came through the youth system and is quite well liked at the club. He's been on loan at Watford this year. If they get promoted, then he's got a buy option of like 6 or 7 million. By obligations, sorry. If not, then it's just an option, and I think Watford will look to trigger that regardless. George Hurst, he's 23, 24, I think by the end of the season. He's another guy which I look at and I go, look, you're a good player, you're a Championship level player. Sell him to the Championship for a couple of million, put a buyback clause in there of 10, 15, 20 million, and just get him off the books for now. Get a little bit of cash in, and then if he turns in something big, then you can go and get him at that point. The final player I have said the club should sell, however, is James Maddison. The club need money to be able to rebuild. And James Maddison is the best player at this football club. Now, it's worrying that I've got to say you've got to sell him, because we're going to touch on it in a second, but the creativity in this squad, there's a lot of issues in the squad, and we'll get on them when we look at buying players. But there's a lack of creativity. You saw it in the game versus Fulham. With no Maddison in that side, we were devoid of creativity. We were devoid of anybody looking to progress the ball, and Maddison is the only player in the squad who can do that. However, he'll have 12 months left in his contract in the summer, and it doesn't look like he's going to sign a new one. So I think you could probably get 55 million for him, to be honest, from Newcastle or Spurs, whoever wants to pay it. Sell him for 55 million and use that money to reinvest into the squad. If all those players leave for the valuations I've said, the club will generate 151 million. Now, that isn't obviously all going to be done this summer. I think that will be done in between January, summer, next January, and possibly next summer as well. So I'm looking at this to be a 2-year rebuild. But a lot of this does need to get done in the summer, or I really do fear for Leicester City next season. I've already mentioned it, that there's a lot of issues with this squad. Now, the first issue is there's only one contracted centre-back beyond the end of the season who is any good. There's technically two, because Yannick Vestergaard is contracted past the end of the season, but has barely played any minutes this season, so I'm not classing him in that. There's only one proper first-team player contracted, one first-team centre-back contracted past the end of the season. At full-backs, there's a lot of full-back injuries in the squad. There's only 2 fit full-backs out of a possible 5 at the moment. I've already mentioned that I'm going to be selling on Ricardo Pereira, and I think a left-back is really needed, as are... How many centre-backs have I ended up saying? I've ended up saying 3 new centre-backs, as well as giving Daniel Amartey a new deal. A goalkeeper is also needed. Danny Ward isn't a good enough goalkeeper. You also need a CDM. Now, this is only if Mendy or Wilfred Ndidi were to depart. If one of them two stays in, then... both Wilfred Ndidi and Mendy to depart. If one of them stays in the club, then you don't need to bring in an extra DM. But I think one of them will do. Again, this is a 2-year rebuild, so maybe Ndidi stays on this summer and you don't bring in the CDM this summer, you look to do it next summer. But if they were looking to move on Ndidi this summer, they've got the option there. You need a centre mid to back up Dewsbury Hall with Yuri Tielemans moving on. You also need, or even challenge that starting spot. You need one, if not two, attacking midfielders, especially with James Maddison moving on. You need a left wing to back up Harvey Barnes. You need two right wings. Definitely at least one this summer. However, you do still have Mark Albrighton at the club. However, Rodgers has previously stated that he doesn't see Mark Albrighton as a right winger anymore because he doesn't have that one-on-one capability. So one, if not two, right wings, and then I would say a striker as well, Kelechi Iheanacho, moving on. So that's a lot of players that the club need to bring in. You know, they're devoid of creativity. They don't have good enough centre backs, and yeah, the midfield seems to be getting bypassed far too easily at the moment. So let's start going through what I've said the club needs to do. As I have mentioned, and I'll mention it again, this isn't all going to happen this summer. I'm aware of that. At least half of this, you know, I've said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I've said 14 new players 14 players if you include Amartey's contract extension. 8 of them probably need to be brought in over the course of January and the summer, if not 9. So let's start moving through these. The first player I've mentioned is Daniel Amartey. Now this obviously isn't, I haven't incorporated into the total transfer spend, which is 180 million. So that will mean that there's a 29 million loss, which the club should be able to afford, especially with the money coming in from the Premier League and sponsorships. 29 million the club should be able to do. So this is fairly realistic in the standard of players I've gone for. As I say, the first player is Daniel Amartey. I would offer him a 2-year contract. That would then take him up to the end of the 24-25 season. I think it'll take him up to the summer 2025. I think that'll be a good point where you could look to move him on, but he would be a good player to keep around the squad up till that point. And yeah, I'd offer Amartey a 2-year contract extension. Now we get into the juicy stuff. The goalkeeper I say Leicester City need to replace Danny Ward with is Dominik Livakovic. We all saw what he could do for Croatia during the World Cup. He was one of the best, if not the best goalkeeper at that tournament. Bayern Munich have been linked with him for January, and this is one I do feel like needs to get done in January. You can't wait until the summer to do this. Danny Ward is not a good enough keeper. You need to bring in Livakovic in January. You need to get it done quickly. I don't know if the club will, but I really do believe it's one the club needs to get done to make sure that they stay up the season, because it's not a guaranteed. Dominik Livakovic would be a huge guy if they could bring him in. I've said 20 million. I think you could probably get him out of Zagreb for 15-20 million, and that would be a really, really good deal if they could do that. Left back, I've said the club need a left back. There was a guy linked from Copenhagen earlier on today, as of recording, for 5 or 10 million. If you want to do that, that's fine. I am recording this on the 4th of January, so if anything's happened after that, I don't know, obviously. He would be a great guy to get in, cheap, and I'd be happy with it. However, I wanted to look a little bit higher than that because we do already have a young and upcoming left back in Luke Thomas. You need somebody with quality now, and I've said Borna Sosa. One of the other options I didn't go for was Alex Grimaldo on a free. I've got a lot of free transfers down, so I didn't want to have another free transfer in there. However, if you could get Grimaldo, that would probably be the first choice, I'm going to be honest. As the backup, though, it's Borna Sosa. Again, really, really good with Croatia at the Euros. And Stuttgart currently in a relegation playoff in the Bundesliga, relegation playoff position in the Bundesliga, so you could probably pick him up for 15-20 million. I'm sure he'd be open to a move to a club who's recently been in Europe as of last season, and you know, are now a mid-table, possibly battling relegation Premier League club. I think he would take that kind of move. You might have to offer 15-20 million to Stuttgart. I've said 20 million down here again, possibly on the higher side of what you would have to spend. But if you could bring Sosa in, I think that'd be an excellent transfer to get over the line. Moving in to centre-back now, and as I say, we have 3 centre-backs that the club need to bring in. I'm looking at, obviously, you've got Amartey as a 4th choice centre-back is what I've given him. So I'm looking at a joint 1st choice centre-back with Wout Faes. I'm looking at a 3rd choice centre-back, and I'm looking at a 5th choice centre-back. The joint 1st choice centre-back I've gone for is Kasunu of Leverkusen. This is a player the club has had an interest in for a couple of years now, and a player that I've wanted the club to sign for a couple of years now as well, ever since it's moved from Club Brugge, I think it was, to the Bundesliga. He hasn't particularly cemented his place in that Leverkusen side as he would have liked, with players like Jonathan Tah and who else is in front of him at Leverkusen? Jonathan Tah and Hincapié in front of him. He hasn't particularly cemented down a centre-back spot as he would have liked. I think you could. This is one of the more expensive signings. I've said 26 million to bring in Kasunu from Leverkusen. However, he's a player that I really think would be worth it. I'd be really happy seeing him come to the club actually, and he's the first centre-back I've gone for. The second one is one of two centre-backs I've gone to bring in on a free transfer, and it's Tosin Adarabioyo. Now, he's obviously currently playing for Fulham. I think Fulham probably will offer him a new deal, I'm going to be honest, but as of recording, he's available on that free transfer, and hence I would look to go and get him. Offer him a 4-year deal, 70, 80k a week, whatever it takes to get him in. I think it would be a really, really good option to challenge those starting two centre-backs, along with Amartey and the fifth choice guy. It would really strengthen this centre-back position from an area which currently has options of, Amartey, Fars, Vestergaard, Evans. It would really, really improve upon those options. You would go from those options to options of Fars, Amartey, Kusunu, Adarabioyo, and then the fifth choice, who is Craig Dawson. Now, again, his contract's expiring at West Ham at the end of the season. This would actually I've got him down as a free transfer here, but this would be one I'd actually look to get done in January. Go to West Ham, offer them £2 million, just say we'll take Craig Dawson. Look, it's not the shiniest signing of all, but to get him in there as a fifth choice centre-back, he's 31, 32 years old. He can be a bit of experience in that locker room to replace the departing Johnny Evans. He's not pretty on the ball. He's not an excellent player. He's not going to get all the fans excited. Yet it'd be a solid signing, a good bit of experience, and I would get it done. So Craig Dawson is actually a player I think Leicester should go out and sign as their fifth choice centre-back. Moving into the CDM position now, obviously, Boubakary Soumaré would be in high rotation with this guy. I've gone for Manuel Ugarte of Sporting, obviously the Uruguayan defensive midfielder. I've said it would cost 24 million to get him in from Sporting. I really like Ugarte. I think he's a good player. I think you could possibly beat the bigger clubs for coming out and getting him now rather than waiting a year or two when the Spurs, when the Liverpools, when those kind of sides will be interested in him. I think you go in early in the summer with a £24 million bid and you just go out and get him. Obviously, this possibly isn't one to do this summer, in which case then next summer there will be more competition. I would do it, but I understand if the club don't, because obviously you do need to keep some sense of organisation and some sense of familiarity between the side. So possibly don't go out and do this one this summer. I think it would be a really good deal if you could though. Sell Ndidi, let go of Mendy and bring in Manuel Ugarte. I think, him and Boubakary Soumaré rotating in that CDM pivot, it would be a really, really good signing if you could get it done. Moving into the midfield now, and the centre midfielder I've gone to sort of compete for a position with Dewsbury Hall and kind of Albrighton. Albrighton's a weird one because he can play centre mid, he can play wing back, he can play kind of winger. He's a bit of a confusing one, so we could possibly compete for the centre mid spot as well. Mark Albrighton, obviously Sharky to the loyal Leicester fans out there. I've gone for Fratesi, however. The Sassuolo midfielder would be the most expensive purchase of the summer at 32 million. However, this really would be one that you were beating the bigger sides to. We need a quality midfielder to come in and bring in to replace Yuri Tielemans. The two sort of more attacking midfielders I've got, one of them's coming from the Bundesliga and one of them's a young championship player. So going and bringing in Fratesi, who should be able to, hit the ground running in the Prem, I think it would be a good signing. A lot of sides are interested in him. I think, slap 32 million on the table to Sassuolo and I think they take it. Again, I think it would be a really, really good signing. He would offer a lot of competition with Keane and Dewsbury Hall. And I really, really want it to happen. I think Fratesi, if all the signings come up, you've then got two really quality talented CDMs, two really quality talented centre mids, and all these players would be below the age of 25, 26. Again, that would be the same with the attacking midfielders, to be honest, the two attacking midfielders. This would then create a really, really strong midfield foundation for Leicester to build off. So yeah, I would go and get Fratesi from Sassuolo. Moving on into attacking midfield, and I've got two attacking midfielders. The first one of these is Alex Scott. Looked really good for Bristol throughout the season. I think he's the guy to go out and beat the bigger sides to him. Slap 16 million on the table to Bristol. Obviously, Nigel Pearson is the current manager of Bristol City, a player who obviously Leicester City fans know well, and Conte would know well, obviously, from his time at the football club. So hopefully there might be a bit of a relationship between the manager of Bristol and the hierarchy at Leicester, which has mainly stayed the same since Pearson's departure. So that could help us jump the queue for Alex Scott. I think he'd be an excellent player to bring in. You could, obviously, with all these midfield acquisitions, you could give him a year or two to sort of develop into the side before he becomes a first-team regular, which the club have liked to do over the years. You look at people like James Justin. It took him sort of a year to get well acquainted with the side before then he became a regular, and obviously now is an England international. Somebody like Alex Scott would be an excellent player to bring in, and I think, 14, 15, 16 million, you could get it done from Bristol, so I'd really look to get him in. Then at the other attacking midfielder I've gone for is Daichi Kamada. His contract is expiring with Eintracht Frankfurt in the Bundesliga this summer. Really talented player, looked good for Japan at the World Cup, and has been a player that I've kept my eye on for a while. I put him in the transfers video that, one World Cup star that every Premier League club needs. Can't remember which club I sent him to, but Daichi Kamada would be a really good signing for Leicester, could get us over the line. Again, he'd be available on a free transfer, so you'd need to get in there early. He would be one that I would recommend not signing in January, but getting a pre-contract sorted, getting a contract offer sent off as soon as possible. Show your interest and hope that you can get him in. I think he would be a top quality signing if you could get it over the line, and he would really, again, add a lot of quality into that midfield. Yes, you'll be bringing in 3 new midfielders, so you could give them time to gel, obviously. No, 4 new midfielders, sorry. So that's a lot of midfielders, I understand that. But that would create a really talented midfield you could rotate between. And then moving on to the attack. Now, as I've said, we need a backup left winger to Harvey Barnes who can challenge him when he's not playing well. We need 2 right wingers, and we need a striker to replace Kelechi Iheanacho, who will not play week in, week out. The left wing I've gone for is Ryan Kent of Rangers. Available on a free transfer in the summer with his contract at Rangers running down. I think this would be a quality acquisition. He can challenge Barnes for that left wing position. He's English. He'd be happy to get a move to the Prem. In a rotation with Barnes, especially if Barnes would possibly look to move on in a year or two, you could see him getting moved to a bigger side, I'm sure. I really think that Ryan Kent is the guy to go out and get here. So get it done. Free transfer from Rangers. Yeah, just get it done ASAP. Right wings now, and as I've said, I've got 2 right wings down. The first one of these is Viktor Sygankov from Dynamo Kiev. Yes, the Ukrainian winger is left-footed, and this is something that this Leicester squad really lacks. They don't have any left-footed wingers at this moment, and this has been something the club has been crying out for ever since they let go of Riyad Mahrez all those years ago. They've never replaced him. So I've gone for 2 left-footed right wingers here to try and replace him, because we still haven't replaced him from all those years ago. Obviously, Viktor Sygankov would be an excellent signing if you could get it over the line. He'd be on a free transfer coming from Kiev. It would probably take him a little time to bed into the club, and I think that would be fine. He'd be on a free transfer, so it's little risk, high reward. And yeah, get it done in my opinion. Next up is Marcus Edwards, the former Tottenham Hotspur winger. Currently playing in Portugal, however, he is English. Yeah, really top quality player if you could get it over the line. He's played really well with Sporting over these years and looked really good in the Champions League so far this season. He would cost a bit. I've said 28 million here. Yeah, just get it done. And then last but not least, as the striker, I've gone for Junior Adamu of Salzburg. Leicester have got a relationship with Salzburg at the moment after their transfer of Patson Daka a couple of summers back. Daka's settled well into the City, I think. I don't quite know how well it's worked at the club, but I think you'd only have good things to say about the City. He looks like a really nice guy, and I think he could really be a key factor in bringing Adamu to the club. 14 million. Quite a cheap deal. I don't think Salzburg would ask the moon for Adamu, and if you could get it done, again, he would just help in that rotation between Vardy, Daka, and then Adamu, who could come off the bench in the final minutes of the game. But what do you make of what I've said to fix Leicester City? It's been a longer video. It's been a video I've wanted to make, me sitting down and talking about it, because I know the pain that this club's going through at the moment, and I know how much we need to rebuild. Top, if you're watching, please sign some players in January. Please sign some players in the summer, because God, we need it. Thank you all for watching this video, and I'll catch you all again in the next one. See ya!